The last time I played NL5 was 10 years ago. This is how I would play NL5 now. Alright, first hand, we 3-bet ace king suited cutoff versus big blind, or basically big blind versus cutoff. And we get the queen check 8, and I assume is going for the range c-bet here. Especially with hands like this, it's important to think about, well, what are we actually achieving by doing so? You mainly fold out low pocket pairs, 2s to 7s, especially without a spade, and then also you get called by weaker hands like flush draws, king 10, ace 9, ace 10. So that's kind of what we're going for here. And by betting 1/3, we already fold out most of the pocket pairs, which then means that on the turn, we are not really able to bet a lot. I think just betting 10% pot is pretty cool because people really have to defend a ton. If they have a hand like ace 5, I guess they have to call against 10%, but they're always folding, so we have a lot of fold equity with the small size. And also we're not really able to make them fold mate hands like jack x, 8x, queen x a lot if we size up to 1/3. So I believe that the 10% size is better. Also, it allows us to attack the hands that we didn't fold out on the flop on the turn. And the 6-7 offsuit is very close. Make sure to know if he's rebetting a lot, because if he is, the EV of this hand goes down drastically because you can never do anything against the free bet but folding. The thing is, however, we also, when he calls, we need to consider if you expect him to overfold pre-flop. So he might fold a hand like king 6 offsuit always, or 6-2 suited, those type of hands. He did call now, which means that his calling range on the flop is probably higher because he simply has stronger hands to arrive on the flop with. So I would be a bit careful. And without any equity, I would still check this hand quite a bit. If there's one street you have more fold equity than you should have, then on the next street, usually you want to be tighter. This is also true for flop c-betting, right? If you c-bet the flop and then they call and you expect them to overfold, well, the turn should be probably tighter than GTO because now they arrive on the turn with a stronger range. The ace-7 offsuit, I definitely agree with the open. On this board you can have an overbet strategy, if you have one. Against a shallower stack, given that his implies are worse because he can win less, I would size down a little bit, so my default bet size for the big size would probably not 150% but more like 100% pot. And then I would still, especially against weaker players, implement always a smaller size to go with that. So I would not only have a big size on this board, because you simply get away with over c-betting with your air, and also therefore you can increase your value betting range with the smaller size. So this hand, if you only bet a big bet strategy, you probably have to check, but I think it's definitely fine to just go with a small bet instead. On the turn, kind of similar logic, I would say. In theory, I don't think you can bet a lot with this hand, but I guess it's just fine to bet fold here. Simply because, yeah, they don't punish you a lot, they don't turn pairs into bluffs, they don't bluff check raise you a lot. And yeah, now he calls, he chose a sizing where you made sure that he calls with all those pairs plus gut shots type of hands, and he had queen jack, and you check back river, I think that's fine. On the left, the ace-deuce offsuit. Ace-deuce offsuit is definitely in GTO land a very high frequency bluff rebet, but this guy has 70% VPIP. So I hope you check the stats here, because, you know, we really want to know how often he's raising to make a decision. You didn't, and you just called. It's not like terrible, but you know, if he's only opening 11%, I would probably even fold this hand. Okay, checks, and you are going for a bet, it seems. Yeah, I go with the 2. I would size up a little bit, because especially with ace-deuce, yes, you could argue you just want to deny his equity and fold out his 5-6 suited. But with that size, I don't think you give him a hard time with a hand like ace-7 offsuit, right? And you would benefit quite a bit if you make him fold those hands. So also pocket pairs, maybe they're folding anyway and you're right about the size, but I would just size up a little bit and then again just check the turn. The turn is obviously pretty bad for you, right? Yeah, not so sure about that. Because, you know, it's check calling range, a lot of check X's, obviously, and I'm not sure if you make him fold a 10, for example. I mean, with the small flop size, I think it has some merit, because you have some hands that you can now fold out. So here you open pocket queens, and then you get free bet, and You 4-bet before checking his stats again, and this kind of tight. You even have a note on him, right? So yeah, now you check the stats and his 3-bet is quite high, so that's definitely an argument to 4-bet more. And then also you have the note calling jam, splash pot, queen 9 offsuit. So I assume that he just went broke for 15 big blinds with queen 9 offsuit pretty much, right? So that means that he's kind of on the spewy side and the more aggressive side. So against that, I definitely want to 4-bet and call it off and be happy. But it also has an impact on my flop strategy if he calls, like now. If he is going broke with queen 9 offsuit and is also 3-betting a lot, I can assume that is probably also more on the aggressive side post flop. So therefore, I would consider allowing him to hang himself, right? If I just check, represent ace queen, ace king, and then he just spews off with his, I don't know, check 10 type of hands. Another way might be to just bet smaller to make him float more and to then make him bluff on later streets. So I like that from a GTO perspective, but against him particularly, if you bet smaller check, he might just, you know, aces offsuit versus button feels like a fold. I would just fold it pre. Yeah, I think that's too aggressive. It's a huge difference if you 3-bet small blind versus big blind or button versus big blind, because this guy's in position, right? So he can call you way more and you have a hand that just doesn't flop anything at all. Queen 10 offsuit, you kind of snap check pre-flop on the flop. You wanna bet your mid pair some of the time. I feel like you're going with the bet my king always and bet my queen never type of approach. Have your king and your queen in your betting and your checking range. I think then you cover certain runouts and also certain lines by your opponent better, and you can do something against it. So in this case, yeah, checking obviously not a mistake, but don't always check. On the river you bet small after checking the turn. I think you can size up a little bit, because at this point, sure, your 10 doesn't even count, but let's say it's a 7. He doesn't really make a difference what size you bet. So I think if you bet like 66% pot instead of 33, you still get the same amount of calls and you just get more value. Ace queen offsuit, small blind versus big blind, definitely an open. I guess you don't play limp strategy, which I don't think you need. And 10-8 offsuit on the right. You're going for the 3-bet? Yeah, this is again a spot where, you know, he's opening 17%. Yes, 10-8 offsuit is definitely in your bluff 3-betting range some of the time. But I would definitely decrease my bluff 3-bets against someone who has like 10% less VPIP than he should have. The ace queen on the left. Yeah, you can do everything. Again, you want to check his 3-bet stat before you make a decision, but this is a beautiful hand in terms of you can jam, you can call, you can 4-bet non-all-in. I think every option makes some sense. That deep maybe jamming is a bit much, but yeah, everything makes sense here. And yeah, I would just base it on his 3-bet stat pretty much. But yeah, as a default, 3-betting non-all-in, 4-betting non-all-in is fine, I guess. He calls. If you think about his 4-bet calling range, then he will have some suited broadways. He will have some higher pocket pairs, like maybe 7s plus. Yeah, so with this bet, I don't think you accomplish much on this board. Yes, maybe fold out some queen check, king queen suited, especially of hearts. But I guess that's pretty much it, right? You're not folding out pocket 8s, you're not folding out ace highs unless he has like ace 5 of hearts. So for the most part, you're just denying equity with this bet. And that's interesting when he calls, which I assume he will a lot against his size to know what to do in the turn. And this is kind of why I would like to see a bigger bet, because with that size you're just not achieving much. And the problem is that could be fine, but he would always bluff the turn if you check to him after he calls with, you know, king jack of spades type of hands when you bet that small. So it's really hard for you to win this hand when you go with that sizing. So I would like to size up, make him fold some hands, just increase your fold equity by maybe even betting 50% pot-ish, and then just check down. Yeah, now on the turn, I don't think you have much fold equity. Even if he has king, queen, king, jack, pocket 9s, pocket 8s, all those hands, jack 9 suited maybe, he's not folding. So I think you just want to check now anyway, I don't think you accomplish much by betting. So you go with this kind of, yeah, 1/3, I don't know what to do kind of sizing. On this card, I would probably consider a jam. You block ace-10 suited, queen-10 suited. It's a bit dicey. He will not have a lot of 6s, 9s, or 10-9. I guess they also fast play a lot. And you has a really hard time to call it down. So yeah, maybe it's too much to jam, to be honest, because you simply have some showdown value as well. And pocket pairs might just call if he has pocket 8s or jacks. Yeah, I just wouldn't like to be in this spot, to be honest. If you check to him, he probably just jams his queen jack, king queen all the time. But also block the bluffing range, so it's really a tough situation for you. On the right, you 3-bet the guy with 42% VPIP, and then you check the flop. Now this is an interesting situation because I assume he would have some leads in theory, but we can assume that people are just checking, which means their checking range is stronger than it should be. This particular hand still accomplishes quite a lot by simply being ace-8. So checking ace-jack of clubs, for example, I would definitely agree. Ace-8 might be low enough that you just deny so much equity by simply betting the flop that it's still fine. As played on the turn, I think the same thing applies. I think you can just bet very small here to deny equity. That's pretty much the only goal and the only thing you can achieve. If he has a hand like king-jack suited or queen-jack suited, all those hands, then he probably now bluffs the river. And by a very small bet on the turn, you just make him fold those hands. But now you're in this spot where like, yeah, here's all those Broadways that he probably bluffs now and you don't know what to do. And on the left, he has actually ace-king suited. Interesting. Yeah, so even the next best hand didn't fold. You're limping 7-5 off, that's kinda loose. These stats probably allow you to do so, so it's fine. You bet the flop, which is fine. You can check or bet. I think mid pairs, bottom pairs, they wanna be in the betting range some of the time. You don't have to. This particular hand gets more folds because you block backdoor flush draws and stuff, so maybe I would check this a bit more, but really it doesn't matter too much. On the turn, well, kinda easy check, I think. Oh. Yeah, I'm not sure what you're accomplishing with the turn bet. I mean, yeah, sure, it's kind of a merge. I guess that's what you're going for. Because you get called by draws, but also you fold out some 6s. So that could be a reason, right? But it kind of puts in a tough spot. Like, if you arrive on the river, then he has those draws. And then you kind of need to check call a little bit, right? If you do that. So also this hand blocks clubs, which is not that great, so you get less often called by weaker hands, so I would just check this. Oh, that hand. Yeah. I remember. So you 3-bet small blind, ace-10 suited versus big blind, so far so standard. And this is not the best board for you, of course. So my approach on this board is to bet big. Maybe also have a two-side strategy, like 10% 66, or have a 66% only strategy. Still kind of a fan of implementing a smaller size if I expect this to work better than it should, which I do. You could argue to just range bet if you think they always fold, you know, any two overcards plus backdoor flush draws. Going range is probably fine, but be aware that you're just betting way too much and way too often. Now you get raised, and yeah, I know what's happening. And I already told you, I do like what you did in a way, because it's very hard for you to find bluffs, but at the same time, it's also very hard for him to find bluffs. You want to block some 10s, maybe some ace-8, right? And therefore I think jamming ace-10 suited is, yeah, I spoiled it, but is okay. The problem is, as I said, he also needs to find those bluffs. The big concern here is also that you are arriving on the flop with 100% of your range at this point. So if you jam this, well, you're basically jamming anything. Any two overs with a backdoor flush draw, and that's quite a lot. And I'm not sure if people are actually raising that much that you can do that. If you would have a more selective c-bet strategy, well, then I think it's fine if you do that some of the time. But for me, it feels like you just range c-bet again, then you're always jamming these hands. I mean, the way you thought about it, you probably don't do it all the time. It's more like sometimes, but you know, be careful. I'm not sure, maybe someone else has a different opinion, but I feel like it's hard for him to find a bluff. Don't forget to join my Discord server, you will not regret it.